Welcome, Bronco Nation, to another exciting preview video. This is Boise State versus Air Force. Boise State 4-2 coming to play at Air Force, a 5-2 program right now. October 22nd, 5 p.m. Mountain Central Time on CBS Sports Network. Air Force favored by 3.5 points in this game and given a 60.6% chance of winning it, according to ESPN. You will notice another face here with me today. That's because I've invited Alex Inscoe, an Air Force super fan, onto the program today to help me preview the Boise State versus Air Force matchup. This is always a super fun, exciting game, special game for Boise State fans, I think, but especially for me. I've got a lot of Air Force history. I've got 3 family members who attended the Air Force Academy. I do claim them as one of my teams. I will be very clear. Boise State is number one over Air Force for sure. You know, when they play, it's Boise State all the way. There is no split allegiances here at all. However, I do claim Air Force as my third team, and I support them when they're not playing Boise. And I will say this, if we're going to lose to anyone, you know, I love Boise go undefeated every year, but if we're going to lose to anyone, I'd rather be an academy team. At least it's someone that we support out there serving our community and serving our country. So this is an exciting game, obviously for me with my connections, but also for the Boise area. Last year, I was doing flags of the opponents upside down, but for Air Force, I didn't do that because of the amount of respect that the Boise State community has for the military. We're so close, of course, with Mountain Home. Then we have the Guard unit right there as well. You got so many military connections there with Boise. Everyone is super supportive of the military. It's one of the reasons that the Air Force Boise game will never be a true rivalry game, because there's just not enough hate there, because you can't hate on a service academy when after the game is done, these young men and women go back to serving their country and to protecting us and allowing us to be able to do videos like this and play the great sport of football. So all of that up front to say that this is a very special video just by itself, but we've also invited Alex on here today. He co-runs the Air Force Falcon Football Fans Facebook group with Rick Baum as well. Rick not able to be with us. He probably partied a little bit too hard after the UNLV game. I think it's my understanding of how things went there, but he's feeling a little under the weather, so not able to be with us today. But we've got Alex here. He also runs the history of Air Force football and basketball, 2 separate pages there. Links to all 3 of those will be in the descriptions. Great information for Falcon fans. He does a really great job of in-depth discussing both of those sports and connections throughout history for both of those programs. So it's going to be great to have him on today. We're going to do kind of a little bit, I know usually these videos are very focused towards the Boise State side of things, but it's going to be a little bit more 50-50, maybe 60-40, but it's going to be a little bit more evenly split here. We're going to talk about the series history. We're going to go through key players for Boise State and for Air Force. We'll go through keys to the game for Boise State and for Air Force, and then we'll give our prediction here at the end. So Air Force Falcon football fans, stick around. This one's for you as well. Obviously, Bronco Blameyer, obviously always going to be a Boise State focus, but I'm a fan of the Mountain West. Obviously, like I said, Air Force is my third team, so I'm excited about this one. Let's get into talking about it today. Alex, thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Jacob. I know we had you on our page video preview last year for last year's Boise game, so it's an honor to be here with you today. It'll be a lot of fun discussing Air Force football, our side of things, to Bronco Nation out there. I know last night, you know, one Bolt team beat a Bronco team last night. I wasn't very happy about that, but hopefully that trend continues later this week. So, you know, and this is a hard week for me because obviously, as you know, Jacob, but not many Bronco fans out there that probably follow your page know I'm a rabid Denver Bronco fan. So I root for the Falcons on Saturday, root for the Broncos on Sunday. So it's a hard week for me to hate on the Broncos.
This was one of the first Boise State jerseys I ever purchased, back in like 2007 or 2008 or something like that. It was one of the first Boise State jerseys I ever purchased. And I cannot tell you how many times people have asked me if I'm a Denver Broncos fan when I wear this jersey. It really does look like one of their jerseys. So obviously, Alex here, you know, he's a Falcon fan and we can forgive him for that, but at least he's got some Bronco in him. There's not the right kind of Bronco. He's got a little bit of Bronco in there.
Well, just a little bit. And the other thing that I will mention is just kind of cutting my, because I know you mentioned some ties to the Air Force Academy. You know, I have my ties as well. My father was a 74 grad. My brother was an 01 grad. I've been going to games all my life. So, you know, it's Air Force football is in my blood, and it's a lot of fun. And, you know, it's fun to, do these previews and, continue to watch that team that I've watched ever since I was my son's age. So
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, this is going to be a great game to go over here today. Like I said, both of us have a lot of connections to Air Force, and obviously I've got a lot of connections to Boise as well. So while I'm not going to be presenting necessarily the Air Force side of things here for Air Force football fans watching, I do understand your side of things as I am a fellow fan when they're not playing Boise. So let's get into previewing this game. Series history, Boise State so far owning the series 6-4. However, it has not been an easy ride. Boise State fans, we all know this. This has been a game that you look at on the calendar every year and you go, man, we've got to play them again, because Boise State opened up the series with 2 wins. First game in 2011, 37-26 win, and then they won 2. And then the Brian Harsin era came in, and it took him a while to figure out how to beat Air Force. Air Force winning 3 in a row, the first team at that time to win 3 games in a row from their conference against Boise State. I think actually it was ever, like FBS era, any team beat Boise State 3 times in a row, and also the only team at the time to beat Boise State 2 times back-to-back on the blue. So a lot of, again, bitter feelings. It's hard to hate Air Force. You can't really hate Air Force because at the end of the day, we support the military so much. But there are a lot of fans out there who are going, man, I hate that we have to play them because it is just so tough to cover that triple option. Well, Boise State figured out some things. They won 4 in a row there, with their last win being in 2020. And then last year, first year on a new head coach, kind of the same trend, right? New guy comes in, Boise State losing at home again. Air Force 2021, they won 17-24 or 24-17. That game was close. You know, Boise State had a chance there at the end. They recovered an onside kick, and then they had a chance. I mean, there was like less than a minute left, you know, but they still had some time. They could have gone down and scored. And then the next play, Hank Bachmeier threw an interception. So that game, you want to remember that matchup. Boise State got a chance to maybe do some redeeming here. Want to talk about this series history at all? Your experience of it, Alex?
It's quite a serious history because, like you mentioned, the first game you had the number 5 ranked Broncos against Air Force in Boise. You know, you got to give Kellen Moore on that game a lot of credit. You know, he played, I think, because I was looking at it, I think he had like 286 passing yards, if I remember correctly from earlier today. But you also got to think it was a 7-point game in the fourth quarter too. So Falcons came to play against that number 5 Boise team. The other thing that I always love pointing out, our first, win against Boise, in the Colorado Springs, 6 defensive turnovers. You don't have 6 defensive turnovers, that game might go a different way. So you got to give a lot of credit to that 2014 Air Force defense for finally breaking the ice against Boise and, showing future generations of Falcons that, yes, beating Boise is possible. And one other thing that I would love to mention, Air Force is the only team with multiple in the Mountain Division, that is, with multiple wins against Boise, and multiple wins up on the blue. As you said, 2 wins up on the blue. The only other team to have a win on the blue in the Mountain Division is New Mexico in 2015. So sorry, Boise State fans, but it's a heck of a rivalry, considering this is only the 11th game in series history. It's amazing because, you never know what you're going to get. You're either going to get, likely, a Boise, larger win, because typically Boise does win larger games. The only game the Falcons had by more than 7 points was the first game, which was 28-14. Or a small Air Force victory, which are always close games and fun to watch. So, it's the series history is unbelievable for just being as young as it is.
Yeah, that 2014 game, I think, really caught a lot of Boise State fans by surprise. Of course, that was the year that Boise State somehow, even though they lost 2 games, their opener, and then against Air Force early in the season, ended up being able to get there, find their way to the Fiesta Bowl and winning against Arizona. And that was a good Boise State team. And yeah, going up and playing at altitude, it's something different. And I think, was Steelhammer? Is that had all those interceptions against Boise State?
Weston Steelhammer had 3 of the 6 turnovers that night.
3 interceptions, half the turnovers for Air Force. So this is not necessarily that Air Force team. It is still a good Air Force. We're going to talk about, like I said, 5-2, which is for Falcons fans. I just finished a video talking about the Mountain West and going through every single team. I have actually predicted your season exactly as it is what has happened so far. When I did my preseason prediction video, I predicted Air Force up to this point going 5-2 with losses to Wyoming and Utah State. Got a lot of fans upset on the Air Force Falcon football page when I posted that video saying that I was an idiot. but I'm just saying. Anyhow, so let's talk about this video here. Air Force with a chance to finish off the slate very nicely here, coming down the rest of their season. Not necessarily as challenging as the front end, but Boise State is definitely a challenging opponent in their way. And same for Boise State. You get past Air Force, only other team really tough is BYU. So a chance to finish off the season undefeated in the Mountain West. You are 3-0 currently right now in the Mountain West Boise State. There's a chance here for Boise to finish off, even with a disappointing start, to finish off strong. So let's talk a little bit about that. Key players for Boise State here. Number one for me, we'll go through key players for Boise State, and then we'll go through key players for Air Force. Number one key player for me is going to be Taylor Green. I said him last week as well, but I think it's going to make sense. It's your quarterback. He's the guy that the offense runs through literally, because this is a running offense right now. But he's going to have to
Which
show
is weird to think.
It's so weird. It's so these two teams, and honestly, Boise State is not that far different right now from Air Force. I mean, they're not running option, but they are running the ball pretty heavily. It is weird. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But the offense is running through Taylor Green, and it has been run heavy. But his arm might be needed a little bit today or this weekend. That it might be needed a little bit this weekend if Boise State's got to go a little bit more up tempo. If Boise State gets behind, Air Force is going to control the clock. So Boise State might have to find something a little bit different from Taylor Green. Or Boise State's going to need to stay in this game throughout, not let Air Force get up by more than a score. And that's going to mean Taylor Green making good decisions on first and second down to set up good third down. So far this season, 35 out of 56, 330 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Nothing super spectacular there. He's got an arm, but it's just not very honed. But his running abilities, 30 rushes for 229 yards and 4 touchdowns have been amazing. This is a freshman who just turned 20, I think yesterday, or maybe it was today. I can't remember exactly when I saw that tweet. But this is a very, very young guy. Talking about another young guy, my second key player here, Ashton Jeanty. He's going to be, I'm not saying he's more important than George Holani, but against Air Force at altitude with a running offense against a good defense, you are going to have to use 2 backs. Boise State's been doing that so far this season. And so they're definitely going to maintain that format, but you're going to need to have your second back be as good as your first back, because at altitude, heavy running, Holani's not going to be able to be out there as long as he usually is. So you're going to have to be swapping these guys out. They're both going to have to be fresh. It is an incredible 1-2 punch between these two guys. I think that they together are some of the best running back duos right now in the country. Ashton Jeanty so far, 58 rushes, 310 yards, 5.3 yards average per carry, 3 touchdowns. Last week, his first 100-yard rushing performance, 2 touchdowns and 109 yards versus Fresno State. And then my final key player of the game here for Boise State before we look at Air Force is going to be Jonah Dalmez. I think this game is going to be close. I think it's going to come down to a possession, or at least maybe where Boise State or Air Force win by like 4 points or something like that, or Boise State loses by a field goal or something like that. Whichever way, we'll talk about how that might go at the end here. Whichever way this game ends up going, I think that the field goals are going to be key, either keeping you in the game, keeping you within a score. So again, not letting Air Force get up by 2 possessions, because if you let them do that and you now have a running offense that you're working with, that takes time. Air Force is controlling the clock. You might get to a point where you've got 10 minutes left in the fourth, the Air Force is up by 10, and the game is out of hand at that point, especially if it's going to take you 4 minutes to score. The Air Force gets the ball for 6 minutes, then you got 2 minutes and you can't really do anything with it. So keeping themselves close is going to be key throughout this game. Boise State, Jonah Dalmez, 10 out of 12 this year, longer 48, but he's at elevation. This is a tough defense, and I think he could have a game winner here, because I think Boise State's going to need to lean on his leg. His leg is going to be extended. He's already got a good leg, but it's going to be extended there with the light air up at elevation. And I think that he could end up having a chance to have a game winner in this game, his first of his career. That's my top players for Boise State. If you want to rattle off your top guys for Air Force.
Absolutely. And the one thing that I will say is it continues to sound weird that it's going to be a running game. And I know I messaged you earlier today. It's almost like we're preparing for like a Navy or Army game at this point. It doesn't feel like it's the typical Boise State passing attack that, you need to take down. So it's definitely different for this one. But going into my key players for Air Force, and most people will be able to guess number one, Brad Roberts. The guy is Mr. Reliable on offense. I think he's only had one. No, I'm not going to say the F word. I don't believe in that F word. But he just 853 yards on the season, just 7 games, over 100.
All of my viewers, because I know this is a clean channel, he means fumble. So I'll just say that. That's the word he's trying to avoid.
Okay, I'd rather have you say it than me because I don't want to jinx anything. Um, but 7 games already, over 100 yards each game. Numerous handoffs in critical situations. Um, you know, Brad Roberts is going to play a critical role in this one. To keep that Air Force offense rolling and honestly to keep the Boise State offense off the field. And I know we'll talk more about that and keys to the game. I think it's hilarious that you have a kicker in your preview because so do I. Matthew DePore, the kid has absolute ice in his veins. What a kicker he is. Last year we ran through some kicker pains in terms of and the year before, honestly, in 2020 during the shortened season, you didn't know if we were going to make a field goal or not. Matthew DePore took that over halfway through the season, and he is fire. It's nice when you have a kicker running on the field, and that likely you're going to get some points out of it. So whether that's extra point or field goal, I think Matthew DePore is going to play a critical role in this one, and you'll hear it because of my score prediction. So. I definitely have him on the list. And then my other key player for Air Force is Jonathan Youngblood, filling in for Alex Mock. When Mock went down in Utah State, our defense, faltered. Things weren't the same. Jonathan Youngblood really stepped up against UNLV last weekend, led the team in tackles, and I think he's going to have to play a critical role in, I still can't believe I'm saying this, stopping the Boise rushing attack. That's what the defense is really going to have to step up, and I think he's going to have to play a critical role and be a leader on that defense for Air Force.
Well, I love that you keep bringing up that Boise State rushing attack because that leads perfectly here into my keys to the game here for Boise State. My number one key, and this sounds like an Air Force key, the number one key here is to play for third and short. You can't get yourself into third and long. I mean, I know as an Air Force fan, you're used to this, but Boise State, you can't get yourself into third and long situations where it's going to be obvious passing downs because Taylon Green is just not yet at a point where he can be reliable. He's made some chances where he's scrambled around and found some openings, but 34 out of 56, and he hasn't been focused in the passing game because it's not his strong point right now. If you get into a point where it's third and short, where you might hand it off to Helani or Genti, or you might take Taylon Green on an end around, not on an end around, but on a quarterback option, or you might have a chance to throw it off to the slot or the tight end. You don't know what's going to happen. They've got to be able to keep Air Force guessing because this is a good Air Force defense. They are a really good Air Force defense. I was going to say this for the end here, but I will just mention right up front, they are the number one passing defense in the country. Now, part of that is the teams they've played, but also part of that is the quality of the defense that Air Force presents. So if you get into an obvious passing down situation, it's going to be a tough day for Boise State. So Boise State's got to play for third and short. That means on first down, you've got to be able to get 3 or 4 yards. And on second down, you've got to be able to do the same thing. Just like with Air Force, where they go, fullback dive. And then once they get 4 or 5 yards, and it opens up the opportunity to do some pitches or take the quarterback on an option route. If you get stopped at the line, now you've got to start thinking, you can go with another running back, play to maybe open up and get those 5 yards that you didn't get in the play before, or you've got to look to the short passing game, and you've got to be able to pick up 5 to 6 yards on second down. So every single play should be for third and short. Now, that doesn't say you can't throw it around the field a little bit. I mean, it wouldn't be Boise State if there wasn't some throws throughout the game. We're not going to go full on Army here, or dare I say Air Force, where we're just going to run the ball all the time. We're not going to go even full Air Force where it's just run the whole time and you have a surprise throw. You are going to have the passing game as part of the offense. You've got good slot receivers out there. You can't, and good tight ends, you can't but use them in the passing game. But the focus should be on that shorter stuff. If you go for that deeper pass and you don't make it, that's got to change how you think about the offense the next play. You can't go for that deep pass again because then you're setting yourself up for third and short. So first key here, play for third and short, keep the game manageable, keep the game within a score so that Boise State doesn't have to try and rely on the passing game late in the game. The second one here is bend but don't break. Air Force is going to move the ball. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it doesn't matter how good Air Force is. It doesn't matter if it's their third string players. Boise State is going to struggle to stop that option. And it's just because we just don't see it very much. I mean, that's how New Mexico, the only time New Mexico ever beat Boise State, they were running the option. And so that's what's going to happen here is that Air Force is going to move the ball. Boise State cannot panic, and they can't get frustrated. When you've got them down on 3rd and 4, and then their fullback just runs up the middle for, a few yards, or they pitch it and they get 20 plus yards on the play. You can't panic. You can't get frustrated. You just go out the next play and you just try to keep forcing them to do multiple snaps to get those yards. And eventually, with the way the option works, if you can stop them and force them to put together enough plays on a drive, there's a good chance a mistake is going to be made. You're stop them for negative yards, or you'll get a sack if they try to do a rollout pass, or there might be a missed handoff. The more reps you can force the option to take, the less chunk yards you can give up, the more opportunities Boise State will have to recover, bend but don't break, get an interception. On one of the 6 plays that Air Force decides to throw the ball against you randomly, or get a sack, something's going to happen. So bend but don't break. If Boise State gives up 600 yards but holds Air Force to 3 scores, that's fine. Bend but don't break is going to be the second one here. The third key for Boise State is have the up-tempo passing game on standby. Boise State's had a whole bye week to prepare for this team. Now, I hope that a lot of that was focusing on the option defense, because that obviously, I'm so happy that we had a bye week. If there's ever a week that we needed a bye week, it's against this team. So I hope that focus has been on the option offense, with the potential of being able to throw against you occasionally, and make sure that Boise State's really covering well at defense. But also part of this bye week, I hope, was figuring out a way to not shift Boise State's offense to a passing game, because I just don't think it works with the players you have. I think the run game is working, 2 back-to-back 300-yard games, which is insane for Boise State. I've never seen that in Boise State's history. The running game is working. The run's heavy. Indianapolis want to be a run-heavy team this entire season. That's what Boise State is right now. They're a run-heavy team, and I don't think they should go away from that. But Boise State, I hope, has found some time to work on some kind of pass attack that they can pull out if they need it. And what I'm talking about is when they need that is when you get into that fourth quarter and you're down by even 10 points, but, God forbid, a couple of touchdowns, and now you need to be able to score within 2 minutes to make up the fact that Air Force is going to hold on the ball for 6 or 8. So Boise State's got to have that ready, whether that means finding some way to use Vidlac, the passing quarterback from the transfer from Oregon State. We really haven't seen much this year, but we saw him against San Diego State in the first half. He had some really nice deep balls. He definitely has a good arm. Whether that's finding a way to use Vidlac, or whether it's using Taylor Green in more of a short passing game, but still focus on the passing game. You're using your tight ends, your slot receivers effectively. You're letting him use the short stuff and get out of bounds versus trying to force him to throw the ball deep where he doesn't really excel at. Find something that works either with Green or using Vidlac as that pinch hitter to come in at the end. Find something that you can put on the field in a desperation type of scenario. I wouldn't even call it desperation, but in a worst case scenario, if that running game has taken you to a point where you're now down by a couple possessions and it's coming into the fourth quarter. So that's going to be my 3 keys for Boise State. Play for the third and short, bend but don't break, and have the up-tempo passing game on standby. Do not start with that. Boise State's done that a couple of games against San Diego State. They started with the passing game, and then they went, whoops, that didn't work, and they came out with the run game, and it worked much better. Same against Fresno State, a little bit more passing than they should have, and then they just really focused on the run game. Don't try to be a passing team. It's not going to work. It hasn't worked. It's not going to work with this offensive line. It's not going to work with Taylor Green. Be a running team, but have that up-tempo passing game ready to go. Rick, let's hit us with the Air Force's keys to the game.
All right, so let's start with that. First of all, Falcons just need to play a simple ground and pound type game, which, that's something that they've always excelled at and been good at. Time of possession is going to be key in this one, especially if both teams are running the football. Obviously, Falcon fans see it traditionally with Army and Navy games all the time. So I think, if the Falcons can aim for 35 plus minutes of possession time, keeping that Boise offense off the field, especially now that it's more of a run first type offense, that's going to be a key in keeping things low scoring and, very manageable for the Falcons. But here's the one thing that they can't do. They can't slow it down so much that, like at Utah State, where they had a 17-13 lead, they can't slow it down and, just be passive aggressive about it. They need to be aggressive about it, but also take their time at the same time and keep, Boise State offense off the field. Sometimes your best defense is your offense, even though we still have a very good defense as well. So that's my first key to the game. Second key is finishing drives. The Boise defense, in my opinion, has been phenomenal this year from what I've watched. Obviously, I'm a big Mountain West guy as well. I'll watch, Mountain West football on Friday night, Saturday when Air Force isn't playing. In my opinion, the Boise State defense is, very good, and the Falcons need to finish the drives, preferably with 7 points, but we'll also take 3 points as well. But finishing those drives and getting those points on the board is going to be key, and or pinning Boise deep, on the, inside the 10-yard line on punts. Doesn't matter, but they need to finish the drives. My third key to the game is passion and fire from the defense. It'll be a major key, because obviously Boise State is bringing in some very good rushing attack with George Halani and Taylon Green, as we've mentioned. And it's funny when you were saying bend don't break. I have the exact same notes here. It's just kind of funny how sometimes stuff like that goes. But the Falcons defense obviously can bend. They need to force turnovers like they did against UNLV. Obviously, we're not playing UNLV. UNLV, I think, has crumbled into their normal selves, but they still are going to need to take out that Boise offense, slow them down, do whatever they can, and make it easy for the offense to stay on the field. I think that'll be a critical role in, where, especially also wearing out that Boise defense as well. Because as you mentioned earlier in the video, playing at altitude makes a big difference. So I think, our defense is going to play a critical role as well. And those are my 3 keys to the game: time of possession, finishing drives, and playing with lots of passion and firing up the crowd. Because I know Air Force fans always get up. Obviously Army and Navy is our main focus every year, but it's always fun to beat Boise State.
I didn't realize, I think, quite how much of a rivalry the Boise State Air Force game had become until I started interacting with a lot more recent academy grads. But especially the last few years ago when Air Force was beating Boise State on a regular basis. I mean, there was some real rivalry tension there between myself and a couple of the other Air Force reaches and academy grads. So I think that we're never going to supplant Army and Navy, obviously. We're never going to supplant those 2 games. Too much history, and even then it's got the inner service factor as well. So you've got all of that deep hatred going on anyway. So we're never going to supplant that. But this is one of those games that it is definitely what I would call a rivalry, not a bitter rivalry, but I definitely call it a rivalry. And I think both fan bases see it that way. So this is going to be an exciting one. Let's talk just kind of to end this video.
Absolutely. And there's, in my opinion, to elaborate on that a little bit, there's a lot of respect from both sides. Obviously, the Boise fans are good to us. In my opinion, we're good to the Boise fans, on the Mountain West page as well. But the one thing that I see as an Air Force fan, when Boise moved in and BYU moved out of the Mountain West, Boise kind of took that place of BYU, in my opinion, looking at it from, like a third party perspective. And I think that's part of the reason why, teams always give Boise their best, is because Boise filled that BYU role. And I know the Falcons always had smash mouth football games with BYU traditionally. And I just think Boise overtook that role of BYU within the conference.
Well, obviously Boise State has been for so long a flag bearer of the Group of 5 with those early Fiesta Bowls, those top 5, like you mentioned, 2011, a top 5 team at that point. So obviously, for so long they were the standard bearer. I think they can potentially reclaim that eventually. It's just this season is moving in a better direction than it was to start, for sure. But there's a lot going on. Let's look at this matchup specifically, though. Like we said, there's a lot going on, and I'll kind of open with that. Boise State loses their offensive coordinator halfway through the year, or not loses. They knew exactly where he was going, and out of town with pink slip. So you fire offensive coordinator halfway through the year. Your number 1 quarterback, your 4-year starter for Boise State, he also leaves with Tim Plow. So now Boise State's at a point here where you're sitting with losses to Oregon State and UTEP, and you just think the season's basically over. I mean, I was feeling that when I did my reaction video. Then Boise State comes back to back with 300-yard games, wins against 2 rivals in San Diego State and Fresno State. back-to-back wins against rivals. Now we're coming into a third game against rival. Can Boise State do it again? The issue for me here is that Boise State, even though they are better than they were to start the season, for sure, miraculous turnaround. They started focusing on what they're good at, which is running the ball, which they should have been doing the whole time. That's what Andy Avalos wanted to do. Tim Plowge is not a guy who can call run plays as an air raid style offensive coordinator. Dirk Cutter, definitely a very experienced coach. How many other, let's just to kind of sidebar here, how many other teams have a former NFL head coach as their offensive coordinator? None in the Mountain West, and I don't know if there's any in college football. That's insane. So this is a guy who is he's a pitch hitter. He's just coming in for this season. He said that very, very clearly. I'm not going to be the offensive coordinator next season. I'm just doing it to support my son who's on the team and his friends and be here for the team I love. But what a blessing. And he has come in and definitely turned things around. Is it enough? Boise State has not truly been tested yet. They played San Diego State and Fresno State, teams that they probably would have lost to before the change. So there's definitely been an improvement, but has it been enough? Because neither of those teams have an offense right now. Jake Haener out for Fresno State, so they're really not looking very good offensively. And San Diego State has just been absolutely terrible with Braxton Burmeister. There's nothing there offensively. Air Force does have an offense. You've got defenses that are better than San Diego State and Fresno State. Both those teams in the lower tier of the mountain, they're much worse against run game now that Boise State's put up 300 yards on them. They're like 100 to 130 FBS. Before that, though, they were still 70 to 130. Air Force is in the top 50 for rush defense. They're 42nd. So this is a team that knows how to defend against the run, and they're number one in the Mountain West for pass defense. Add on to the fact that they have an offense that Boise State never seems to be able to stop. It's going to be a very different game than the previous two ones that Boise State has played, even though it's changed. Is it enough? I just don't know. I'm going to talk about this right now, but I don't know if it's enough to break the Air Force curse and get that win for Andy Avalos. It's going to be a tough one. I mean, what are you seeing when you're looking at both these teams as far as who you think is going to kind of pull out the victory in this one?
Well, it's going to be a grudge match. There's years where you sit down and you're like, yeah, Boise's probably going to kill us. You hope that that's not the case, but likely it is. And then there's years where there's some surprises. Other years where, like this year where it just, you sit down and you look at some of the key, pieces here. Two of the best defenses in the Mountain West. Boise's given up 115 points. Air Force has given up 115 points. I really think that's interesting. 16.4 points a game for the Falcons, 19.2 points for the Broncos. And you have, in my opinion, the two best defenses in the Mountain West going at it on Saturday. It's going to come down to which offense can perform more. A running shootout, in my opinion, obviously favors the Falcons since we're traditional and, we know how to do that. But still, this game is going to be close, and I honestly could see it going either way. But it's going to be one of those closer Air Force Boise matchups for sure.
I mean, the issue when I look at this is, first off, Air Force is good. They're 5-2, and I know the fan base is not necessarily as high on the team as they were to begin the year. But I said that at the very beginning. I said this is a good Air Force team that I don't think is as good as they were last year, but they're a good Air Force team that has a tough schedule, which honestly doesn't look as tough as it did in the now. But it's a team.
It looked worse on paper, honestly.
It did. But, you're looking at a team that looked like they had a pretty tough schedule. And then you add in the fact that I said Air Force always drops a couple of games that they shouldn't. They always lose. They're always better than the team, but then they lose the game anyway. I think that's what happened with Wyoming and with Utah State, honestly. But this is a good Air Force program. And I'm not, if you stuck around the video this long, I'll kind of spoil my other one for you. You've been good. You've been listening. But I have Air Force winning out the rest of the year. We'll talk about after this Boise State game. After this Boise State game, I have them winning out the rest of the year here. So a chance to get to 10-2 or 9-3, depending on how this game against Boise State goes.
Absolutely. Winning the Commander-in-Chief's trophy against Army, and then you got New Mexico, that should be a win. CSU, that should be a win. And the way San Diego State's playing right now, Air Force might actually finally be able to break their curse against San Diego State this year.
Yes. Yeah. I had in the beginning Air Force losing to San Diego State and Colorado State because I really miscalled Colorado State. I thought Mike Norvell would be magic there because he's a great coach. Nope, not happening. They should beat. I mean, it could be one of those games where they lose, but they should beat Colorado State. There's a little bit of a rivalry factor there, of course, but they should be able to beat Colorado State. They beat Colorado, And honestly, both those teams look equally terrible, so they should be able to beat Colorado State. And then I do think that they'll be able to beat San Diego State. So after this Boise State game, I think they're going to go undefeated. You're looking at an Air Force team that has a chance to finish the year 9-3, 10-2. So they're a good team just to start with. And then you have the fact that Boise State has made a lot of changes, which you don't have complete team. I've never seen a team completely fix everything overnight before.
That's impossible. Look at the Denver Broncos.
I've never seen a team that played as poorly as it did in the first half lose to UTEP. I mean, that right there is symptomatic of more than just an offensive coordinator issue. That's symptomatic than more than just a quarterback issue. And obviously, I think that this team would now go back and beat that team with changes that have been made. So it has been a near miraculous turnaround for Boise State. But there's still issues there that I think can be exposed. Our secondary, for one, is not as strong against the passing game, which not a factor necessarily with the Air Force Academy, but they'll throw out a couple of passes from time to time. I mean, they do have a quarterback that's, he's not as good as the previous guy who was was great before he ran into issues there and had to be removed from the team. But he can throw the ball around, and they usually do have like 60 or 80 yards passing or something like that, and a touchdown occasionally. So that might be a way that Boise State is being exposed. It's an Air Force team that they struggle against all the time, and they're at Air Force. You add that to the fact they have to go up and play at altitude, which is going to just exhaust this team. And then the final factor here is that Boise State's offense is now not built to be able to counteract Air Force. Traditionally, you've got Boise State. We would call them a balanced attack, but the passing game is a huge focus for Boise State traditionally. They have a quarterback usually that can go out there and throw for about 300 yards a game. And that is traditionally the Boise State offense going all the way back to Ryan Dinwiddie in the early 2000s. There's been a couple bumps in the road between them, but overall, that is the traditional Boise State offense. So Air Force gets up by a couple possessions. You can score in a minute, 20 seconds, and they can go for a 7-minute drive, and you can score again and win the game. That is not the offense that Boise State has right now. So you have the fact that it's a good Air Force team. You have the fact that it's Air Force, period, which always hurts Boise. You got the fact that you got to play up at the academy. You got the fact that you have so many different things happening in the offense that you completely change. You have the fact that it's a rushing offense for Boise State that doesn't meld well against Air Force with the traditional what you look at in this game. And you have the fact that you have a new head coach here, second-year head coach in Boise State, and Andy Avalos for Boise State, who hasn't had a win against Air Force. And traditionally, it takes coaches a little while to settle in. Now, Boise State almost beat Air Force last year. It was really, really close. But I think I'll throw out my prediction right here. I think that this game is going to come down to the wire. I think it's going to be a very low-scoring affair. In fact, I'm looking at the score I'm predicting right now, and I think it's probably too high. I honestly think that it might be a little bit less than this. But I'm going to say I think that the Air Force Academy does take this game 24-20. And again, I think that's high. Honestly, I would not be surprised to see this game end 17-13 with the Air Force Academy in the lead. I think Boise State will have every chance to win this game. I think that they will be in it right to the end. I think that they'll have several field goals that they have to use instead of a touchdown, and maybe that'll hurt them in the back end. But I think that just at the end of the day, they get down by 2 scores. They make up for one of them. They get the ball back with a few seconds left, with a minute left or 2 minutes left or something like that. And they have a chance to come down and win the game at the end. But the issues on the passing game that have not been resolved, period, whether it's Taylor Green or Hank Bachmeyer back there, the offensive line can't block for the passing game, and the wide receivers have not shown themselves able to get open in a traditional passing game. And you got the fact that Taylor Green is not necessarily a passing quarterback. That's going to hurt Boise State. They're going to go, 3 and out or something, or they'll throw an interception on the final drive like they did last year. It's going to hurt me. I'm going to hate it. The fan in me, the Boise State fan in me is saying, Boise's going to win this game. Absolutely, 100%. The analyst side of me is saying, I think this is going to be lost. Now, I will say this before you can kind of finish off us in the video. I will say this. This loss is not as detrimental to Boise State as it traditionally would be. Because Boise State, we don't have to win this game to get to the Mountain West Championship. We still control our own destiny after this game. If Boise State loses this game to Air Force, they would have to lose another game down the road. And again, the rest of the games on the schedule are not that challenging, Mountain West wise. Colorado State, Nevada, Wyoming, Utah State, none of those teams look very good. Could Boise State lose to them? Yeah, they lost to UTEP. They could lose to one of those teams. But this is a much better team. I think they should be able to beat all of those programs. Boise State would have to lose one more game in addition to Air Force, and Air Force would have to do what I'm predicting they do, which is go undefeated the rest of the way. Which
and
again,
hope for help.
That's not a key. They should. Are they better than every other team on their roster? Yes, they are. Will they win every other team against every other team? I think they might drop one more. I'm predicting undefeated, but I would not be surprised to see them drop one more game. And if they do, and even if Boise State loses another game, they're still in. So Boise State controls their own destiny and still has a very good shot overall of getting into that Mountain West Championship game, regardless of the results in this matchup. So does Boise State want to beat Air Force? Yes, they do. Should they beat Air Force? I'm going to say evenly matched. I think that Air Force holds the edge because it's at home. If it was Boise State at home, I think they could take this one. But I think Air Force will win this game, but it's not the end of the world. The dirt cutter train is still running for Boise State fans. There's still a lot. This is still a much better season now than it was before. And I will say this, I am lamenting the fact that the offense doesn't match up against Air Force's style of play. The previous offense would not have beaten Air Force. We'd have gotten crushed by like 3 touchdowns. So this offense definitely has a better shot than at least this offense runs, actually has an ability to actually put up yards and points. This offense has a better shot at beating Air Force than the one that we put on the field earlier this season, but it doesn't, I think, have a better shot at beating Air Force than a traditional Boise State passing game that has that ability to score quickly, which this offense just doesn't right now. So again, I'm apologizing, but you know what? I'm not biased on this channel. Well, I am biased on this channel, obviously, but I try to say what I actually think is going to happen, give you an honest analytical take. So I think, again, I said it before, if any team's going to beat us, I would prefer it be Air Force. Unfortunately, that has happened more than I would like. I think it's going to be another one of those situations where Air Force, at the end of the day, comes away with a very close win at home, where it is just very, very hard to beat the Academy.
Well, and I just want to mention that we didn't share notes beforehand, so I think it's funny how many notes we had similar. And I think the score prediction is going to be a little hilarious as well. Not that it's the same, but it's fairly close. The one thing that I will finish with is the fact that Boise's coming off of a bye week. That can help teams, but it also can be a curse too, because you haven't hit anybody in a couple weeks. Yes, you're more rested, but sometimes it can take a little bit to jumpstart the offense. And then you got a Falcon team that's going into a bye week that's very motivated right now, coming off a blowout win against UNLV, but they should blow out UNLV with the roster they have. But also you got to think that I spoke to quite a few of our team players after that UNLV game. They're pretty pumped up for Boise. I would say they're just about as pumped up as for Boise as they are for Army in a couple weeks. But when you got a team that's going into a bye week before one of their bigger rivalry games, they got nothing to lose. And honestly, we don't control our own destiny with the Mountain West Conference right now. We're going to need a lot of help to get to the championship game. After we lost to Utah State, I said, let's just put all of our chips into Army and win back the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. There's still hope. There's a lot of help that needs to be done. So Air Force has nothing to lose. So they're going to give it their best shot on Saturday. And sometimes those teams with nothing to lose, it can be a deadly scenario, especially when they're about to go into a bye week. And score prediction for Air Force, I do think that they take this, and it's not going to be by your traditional touchdown. I think it's going to be by field goal. I was talking to Matthew DePore after the game the other day, and I said, I have a feeling you're going to be kicking a game winner. Air Force 27, Boise 24.
All right. Well, that'd be very close to the game last season for Boise State. Like we said, that was a 17-24 situation. So, like I said, both of us are very similar to what Air Force ended up doing last year against Boise State. And again, obviously, I'm rooting for a Boise State victory. There is no cross allegiances here. I am 100% sold in Boise State fan. Let's put all rumors to rest there.
I'm sure somebody will try to give you crud about it on your page.
There's always someone upset. When you do these videos, you're always going to end up upsetting somebody. But I think look at this honestly, I don't think that Boise State fans will be surprised if they lose to Air Force. I mean, even if Boise State had been good from the beginning this year, and even if Air Force had lost every game coming into this one, Boise State fans would still be going, oof, this might be a loss. I mean, that's just how it is with this. And then you have the fact the offense has had so many radical changes. It now doesn't mesh quite as well as it traditionally does, and Air Force is good. I don't think Boise State fans are going to be too upset with me predicting a loss in this one. Now, we want to hear your thoughts on this. I'm going to be posting this in the Mountain West Conference Alliance Facebook group, so make sure you join that. I'll put the link in that in the description. I'm going to be posting this, or I might let Alex post it so that people actually watch the video versus if I post it, like, well, that guy's also a Boise fan, so I'm going to watch it. So I might let Alex post the video in the Air Force Falcon football Facebook group. But either way, however you're watching this, I'm also going to put it in Bronco Nation. Make sure you join that group. We're up over 11,000 members now. Alex's group, Air Force Falcon Football Fan, is a little bit newer group, but they're up over 3,000 members as well already. So make sure you are joining those groups. And then what I'm trying to say here is we want to hear a discussion. So let us know in the comment section of YouTube. Let us know in the comment section of these groups. We want to hear your thoughts. This is a rivalry game. This is a big game. It's got a really nice time slot here on CBS Sports Network. 5 p.m. Mountain Central Time is a 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So it's that last kind of evening prime time slot. So this is a very nice time slot. There's going to be a lot of eyes on this game. And I think we need to get this discussion going. Can Boise State pull off the upset? Can Air Force pull off that win to, again, kind of level the play? They'll pull to 6-5 overall in series history. This has been a back and forth game. Is this another back and forth where Air Force wins a few before Boise State figures out a way to get the win again? Let us know in the comments. We want to have that discussion with you, just like Alex and I have had that discussion today. So thanks so much for coming on, man. This has been great. I'll let you, if you say have any final words you want to say before I close up. Thanks so much for coming on. Thanks very much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe.
All right. Well, I just want to thank everybody. Jacob, this was an honor to be on your page this year. And I will leave you with this. Go Air Force, sink Navy, beat Army.
And as always, go Big Blue.